Imagine waking up above the city in a breathtaking luxury apartment. Rare watches are waiting on the table, designer clothes fill the closets, and enormous amounts of money sit within reach. From the outside, it looks like you've made it, but the real story begins when you discover what life at this level of wealth is actually like. Your phone is filled with messages from people you've never met, asking for money that doesn't officially exist. Everyone thinks you're rich. Banks see you as a criminal, and every dollar you touch could be the reason you spend the next 20 years behind bars. This is the world of a counterfeit money king, a world where fake wealth can create a real fortune, but one mistake can destroy everything. At first, it doesn't look like a criminal empire. It might begin with one person who discovers that people rarely question money when it looks convincing. The temptation is obvious. A piece of paper with a tiny production cost can appear to have enormous value. But counterfeiting isn't simply about printing fake bills. Modern currencies contain sophisticated security features, specialized materials, and systems designed to make reproduction extremely difficult. The moment someone tries to turn fake currency into real spending power, they enter a dangerous game of detection, surveillance, and financial investigation. Our fictional counterfeit king, let's call him Marcus, understands that the biggest danger isn't creating fake money. It's moving it without attracting attention. Marcus thinks like a businessman. He studies risk, builds relationships, and creates layers between himself and the people doing the dirty work. He rarely handles the money personally. Instead, he surrounds himself with intermediaries, couriers, and people who believe they are working for someone else. The higher Marcus climbs, the less directly connected he becomes to the operation. His lifestyle changes quickly. Expensive restaurants become normal. Luxury hotels become temporary offices. Cars that once seemed impossible suddenly become affordable. But there's a strange contradiction. The more successful Marcus becomes, the more paranoid he gets. Every unfamiliar vehicle looks suspicious. Every unexpected phone call feels dangerous. Every knock at the door makes him wonder whether someone has talked. And that's the first hidden cost of becoming a counterfeit money king. You can never completely enjoy the money you're making.
Imagine walking into a store with thousands of dollars. You can buy almost anything, but you can't simply explain where the money came from. Large purchases create records. Banks monitor unusual financial activity. Businesses keep transaction records. Financial institutions have systems designed to detect suspicious patterns. Even when fake money successfully enters circulation, investigators can sometimes connect individual notes through serial numbers, surveillance footage, transaction records, or testimony. Marcus therefore becomes obsessed with appearing ordinary. He doesn't want to look like a criminal mastermind. He wants to look boring. The strange thing about underground wealth is that displaying too much of it can become evidence against you. A sudden mansion, exotic cars, and extravagant spending can attract exactly the attention you're trying to avoid. But Marcus's greatest problem isn't technology. It's people. Criminal organizations depend on trust, and trust is incredibly fragile when everyone has something to lose. One person gets arrested, another becomes afraid, someone wants more money, someone believes they're being cheated, someone decides to cooperate with investigators. Suddenly, an empire built on secrecy starts collapsing from the inside. Marcus understands this, which is why he constantly changes his circle. But that creates another problem. The fewer people he trusts, the more isolated he becomes. He may control millions in fake currency, yet have nobody he can genuinely trust. Meanwhile, investigators are following a completely different trail. They aren't necessarily looking for the richest person in the organization. They're looking for patterns. Where does suspicious currency appear? Which transactions are connected? Are the same people repeatedly appearing near suspicious incidents? Are businesses reporting unusual notes? Are financial movements inconsistent with someone's legitimate income? A counterfeit operation can therefore become a massive puzzle. Investigators don't need to catch everyone at once. They only need enough pieces to understand the structure.
And then comes the moment every counterfeit king fears: the first arrest. Maybe it's Marcus's couriers. Maybe it's a small-time distributor who knows more than he should. Maybe it's someone who has been cooperating with investigators for months. Marcus hears that someone has been caught, and suddenly the entire empire feels different. Phones become dangerous. Meetings become suspicious. Friends become potential witnesses. Money becomes evidence. The irony is brutal. Marcus spent years building an empire so large that he could supposedly control everything. But the bigger the operation becomes, the more people it requires, and every additional person creates another possible weakness. Eventually, Marcus faces a choice: continue expanding and increase the risk, or disappear before everything collapses. But disappearing isn't as easy as it sounds. Luxury creates a trail. Properties create records. Vehicles can be tracked. Businesses have paperwork. Relationships leave evidence. Even a person who believes they've erased their identity may have left years of digital and financial footprints behind. And this is where the fantasy of becoming a counterfeit money king completely falls apart. From the outside, it looks like unlimited wealth. From the inside, it's a prison without walls. You can't freely spend everything you have. You can't trust everyone around you. You can't openly explain your success. You constantly worry about surveillance, betrayal, arrest, and losing everything. The money that was supposed to give you freedom becomes the reason you have none. And unlike legitimate wealth, counterfeit wealth creates no real economic value. It damages businesses, creates losses for people who unknowingly receive fake currency, and forces governments and financial institutions to spend enormous resources fighting fraud. The consequences don't stay inside the criminal organization. Ordinary people and businesses can end up paying the price. So what happens to Marcus? Maybe he escapes for a while. Maybe he disappears into another country. Maybe his empire collapses when one person decides to cooperate with investigators. Or maybe he's arrested and spends decades wondering whether the money was ever worth it. Because that's the real lesson behind the counterfeit money king. The most dangerous part isn't the fake money. It's believing that fake money can buy real freedom. A counterfeit king may control mountains of paper, but he doesn't control time. He doesn't control the law, and he certainly doesn't control the people around him. In the end, the empire doesn't usually collapse because the king runs out of money. It collapses because the king runs out of places to hide. So the next time you see a banknote, remember that behind every piece of currency is an enormous system built on trust. Banks, businesses, governments, technology, and millions of people agreeing that the paper in their hands has value. Break that trust, and the consequences can be enormous. This was the hidden life of a counterfeit money king. Luxury on the outside, paranoia on the inside, and an empire built on something that was never real. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating stories about the hidden worlds of money, crime, power, and extraordinary people. And remember, sometimes the most interesting stories aren't about how people become rich, but what they're willing to risk to look rich. Thanks for watching.